I just wanted to introduce to you Klay Bartee. He is a therapist. Are you a therapist? I don't know. Yeah, kind of like that.
Some say that.
Down at Harding University, I first met Klay probably 20 years ago or something like that. When I met him, he didn't have PhD behind his name, and now he does. Now he's got his doctorate. When I first came into contact with him, he was actually one of the football coaches for the Harding University football team. I'm guessing you don't do that anymore.
Right. I'm off the field now.
So I met Klay when I was struggling. So because he's a therapist, a counselor, when I started struggling in my addiction and with life issues, I had been to some other counselors at Harding as well. But somehow I ended up with Klay. And so I have learned a lot from him. He has seen me at my absolute worst. Yes, when I was in the depths of my addiction, and before I went to, he's actually the one that suggested the rehab that I went to in Mississippi in Hattiesburg. And I was just at the bottom of the barrel, and I didn't know what I was going to do, and I visited with Klay, and I ended up going to rehab, and so anyway, he and I formed not just a counselor relationship, but a friendship, he and his wife, and then he also counseled with Roger some, and with my family, and so he's just near and dear to my heart, and he just knows about recovery and about Jesus. And so that's a really good combination, as we all know. Amen. And my dad quotes him a lot. So there's some things that I remember that Klay has said over the years, and y'all heard my dad say, you know, he's like Satan's out in the driveway doing push-ups while y'all are in here getting caught up on Jesus. He's just waiting for you to come outside. Yeah. That came from Klay. So now when my dad refers to Klay, Dad, you'll know who he's talking about. Anyway, so I'll be quiet and let him talk now. Okay, thanks, Klay. Thanks for coming.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. I appreciate it. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
It's good there. And hello to Freedom Talks out there in that land somewhere. We're grateful that you're joining us. Happy that you're doing that. And you just watch in as we talk with each other tonight. So we're grateful for that. And hello again to you guys. I was here just not too long ago, Sunday or so ago. So nice to be back so quick and to be with you good folks. I think I said then that, you know, I remember when John 3:17 was an idea, a dream. And I don't know if the dream went this far as to where you guys are today and all the success and the neat things that have happened, but it just kind of goes to show you if good seeds are planted and there's good soil and there's some water and some sunshine, then the Creator provides the growth. And so I'm eternally grateful to I don't even consider myself being really a part of this. I love to help, but just does my heart good. We were here on Sunday out, and Lisa was in the back. That's my wife. And when y'all were singing, she's just bawling. I mean, she just cries. Of course, she can cry real easy. She's got a lot of practice in crying with me, but she's soft-hearted, and that was just really a special time for us. So thank you. It's good to be back. We'll try to figure out something to talk about. I may get y'all to help me a little bit, see what you're interested in or what's going on. I'll try to kick us off here. And we're going. How much time do we have?
An hour or less.
An hour? Okay. I don't have anything to do you? Yeah. It's like y'all want me to stay around and talk as long as possible. So I understand. When I think about recovery in particular, and I want to tell you a little bit about. I was a football coach for about 34 years. About 24 of those were at college level, 10 of those was in high school level. What got me into therapy per se is that, like most coaches, we were out in Texas at a university out there, and the head coach got fired, and so we're out of a job, which happens quite a bit. And at that point in time, I had moved my family around like typical coaches do, and we were at about the fourth job in about 8 years, something like that. And I started noticing that my oldest, my son, was beginning to not develop relationships, very, very strongly. He's kind of given up on that because, after all, if you're, fourth, fifth, sixth grade, if you're going to move in 2 years, he's just not putting anything into it. So I noticed that. And I told Lisa, and don't think I'm all that, big of a person, because she's a nurse, so she could get a job, anywhere. So I'm a big talker. I said, we're going to go somewhere, and I'll cut grass if I have to let these kids go to school in one place until they finish. I don't feel good about that. And so that's kind of what brought us back to Searcy, to Harding University, because some friends of mine were starting a marriage and family therapy program. They asked me to come. I said, you'd be good at it. I said, I doubt that, but I ain't got nowhere else to go. And so I'll come and I'll coach there while I do this. And short story out of that, I kind of started enjoying counseling and therapy, and it was really kind of like coaching and teaching, and so it was kind of a fit for me, and it kind of stuck. I had no idea. Came back here in 93, and we're still here. We'd never been at a place, that long. It's kind of crazy. Don't know if we'll stay, but, we'll see. And I got back into coaching and seeing and doing people, and I began to understand that it was really about relationships. And so early in my career, I worked about 6 years in recovery center at Baptist Hospital down in Little Rock. And so I've got a few years of working in treatment in a setting just like this, residential treatment setting. I came out, spoke and did some stuff for the state association, the board, addicts board. I forget what we call it now. But I did a lot of that kind of work. So my experience, in recovery goes back about 25 years, I guess. So we can usually talk about things and relate to certain things from all of that experience. And what I want to do tonight is kind of hone in on the idea of relationship and talk about how important a relationship is, even when my life was not going very well, when your life was not going very well. There were relationship aspects to all of that. And so if you think about it, addiction, and we'll use that as a blanket term, addiction, is about relationship. The true definition of addiction actually is an abnormal relationship with a substance or an object or an event or a person or a relationship. You can almost fill in the blank, but it's an abnormal relationship in which negative consequences are not promoting a change. Does that make sense? Yes. It does, doesn't it? You see, in normal relationships, when I come across something that gives me a negative consequence, I'm kind of wired to make an adjustment. So addiction it's finding myself in a position of an abnormal relationship. And we might not have put those words to it, but we've all been there. We understand what that feels like, the insanity, how powerful, how cunning, how baffling, this addiction is. And those are metaphors that we came up with, those are metaphors that we came up with to demonstrate, this abnormal relationship. And so when you find yourself in the throes of addiction, relationships that are out here between my family and friends, those are getting strained, aren't they? They're getting put to the test. and it's because of my abnormal relationship with a substance. But by myself, I can't really do much with that abnormal relationship, and that's kind of what clamps us, into addiction. So does that begin to kind of resonate with what we're talking about? So again, a normal relationship is if I've got a fascination with glowing red hot horseshoes, and I see one and I'm like, oh man, I love a glowing red hot horseshoe. Have you seen how pretty those things are? I mean, they light up a dark room. I love it. And so I go and I pick up a glowing red hot horseshoe, but I can't hold it very long because it really hurts. And so I have a negative consequence for my fascination with this glowing red hot horseshoe, and I drop it really quick and it hurts, and I go, say, that's not too abnormal. What's abnormal is the next day I see that glowing red hot horseshoe and I go, man, look at that. That is so pretty. I got to pick that up. And there's the smallest little thing in my head that says, do you remember yesterday that burn? I'm like, nah, that didn't burn. I just thought I did. It wasn't that bad. Or it was this, or it was that, whatever. You know how that thinking goes? Have you ever had that kind of thinking? And I just go and I go, I got to pick it up again. And I pick it up again. Oof, it's just as bad. Maybe it's worse. It's hot. You see, a normal relationship with a glowing red hot horseshoe would be, look, but don't touch. That's normal, right? The negative consequence is going to affect or promote a change in my behavior.
Right. Yeah.
But in addiction, that seems to be, that piece of wired information is not there. And so the abnormal relationship is when negative consequences don't promote a change. And so the 100th time I go back to that red hot horseshoe, people start telling me, hey, quit picking up the horseshoe. And if you ever had this, you go, oh, genius. Yeah, duh. Like I don't know that, You see, knowledge never kept me sober. Only action keeps you sober. It's doing the different things. It's not knowing, it's not insight, it's not understanding. We got all of that. It's actually the doing something different that will eventually give you, something different. So I like to organize around the idea of what we're dealing with is really an abnormal relationship. And the reason I believe that's so important is because I think everything in the universe is about relationship. That's why we were created. We were created, I believe, my faith tells me, for relationship. Have you ever wondered, have you ever tried to get into the mind of the Creator? Like, what the heck? What'd you do this for? Why in the world, interesting statement in it, why in the world, what that means, would you create us, set us up for this kind of failure? Maybe you never thought like this, but I've had a lot of people that do. And then we're out of the garden, we're on our own, we're in this terrible world that we have to suffer through. What kind of loving Creator is that? You see, one of the problems that I had in my struggles is that I could not wrap my head in a logical manner around a Creator or a God like that. So thankful for the steps, because when you come down there to that third one, it says God as you understand Him, not God as you create Him. But it's not understanding God that ushers me into a new relationship. It's a statement that I don't need to understand. God to be in relationship.
Amen.
At whatever level of understanding we have, that's enough. Doesn't matter how different it is. We could poll everybody in here, and everybody would have a different idea, a nuanced idea about the Creator, about God, and that's okay. Because He's bigger than all of our collective imaginations anyway.
Amen.
We could never understand Him. And though the magic of those steps in recreating this idea of a normal relationship is we don't have to understand that. So whatever level we're at, that's good. So he creates. Why did He create? Again, I'll flop back to the idea of relationship. He has to have relationship, or the Creator. I try to drop the he and stuff these days because I don't think that's accurate. Okay, it's much more of a combination. That's other stories. The Creator has to create because relationship must exist. And so that's why we're here. That's why I also think that when relationship gets on the abnormal end, it can be what we call addictive. Recovery is a restoration of real relationship. And one of the fascinating things about the 12-step model of recovery is because there was two guys long time ago. Y'all use the big book? Y'all? Parts of the Celebrate Recovery, which has aspects of the big book. If you want some cool reading sometime in your spare time, you'll like to read. You pick up the big book of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. Get my words out sometime. Two guys a long time ago, Dr. Bob and Bill W., sat together and they pulled ideas straight out of the New Testament. That's where they came. But they worded them in a way that made it acceptable to us. All the people that had been given up on, all the people who they pointed fingers at us. They said we had no character. They said we had no willpower, no discipline. They don't know. There ain't nobody with more willpower than an addict. I'm telling you, nothing can top the willpower of an addict. Amen? Because, man, by gosh, we can go. You talk about against all odds was written, for the addict. It ain't got nothing to do. It's got nothing to do with willpower or strength or intelligence. And so they formulated what we call a disease model, which some people have problems with, but I don't want you to have a problem with words because we made them all up. Words are metaphors. They're here to describe something, and we made them all up. But the disease model is saying basically that anything that takes me away from a normal pattern of health, dis-ease. See how we even stuck those together? Disease. So anything that takes me away from a normal pattern of health can be classified as a disease. So we built this disease model about addiction because addiction, an abnormal relationship with substances, definitely takes me away from a normal pattern of health, doesn't it?
Yes.
And people go, oh, no, you chose to use. Well, of course I did. What does that mean? Do you think people that have diseases, do not have choice involved in the acquisition of their disease? It does not render it invalid. But people have a real trouble sometimes thinking about that. But I don't want you guys to do that. I want you to see that disease is simply being taken away and that the abnormal relationship with the substance is something that can do that. And then we get into these habituated patterns. of trying to just live life the best we can. You know, and it's tough. And it is as if there are two of us inside. Does that make sense? There's me and there's the addict. And you know what they do? Man, do they fight. My gosh, they fight. Sometimes they fight to the death. Sadly enough, isn't it? Yeah. You know, they talk about suicide rate among addicts. I just throw this in for your consideration because I don't believe it. It's not ever been a suicide. There's been lots of homicides. Because eventually, at some point in time, if it gets to be the best idea, sadly enough, the self will kill the addict. They just happen to be in the same body. Oh, it's such a sad thing. When we would lose people in treatment, I would weep because it's so sad to be in a position to where that seems to be the best option. That you can get there, can't you?
Yep.
You can get there. And my hope and my prayer is that you do not have to be at that point. But if you are or have been, send up a flare. A lot of us that have been. A lot more will be. Nothing wrong, bad, or it's not nothing to be ashamed of, not in the least. It's just a position or a relationship sometimes we find ourselves in. So where was I? What was I talking about before that? Y'all go. Do what? The big book. Huh? Suicide rate was actually a homicide rate. See, I do that to you sometimes just to see if y'all really are listening, or if you just get in trance and go. No, the disease model, good. Thank you, you're helping me. I say that, but actually I do forget where I'm at. Relationship and recovery. The disease model, Bill W. and Dr. Bob created those 12 steps that are also in Celebrate Recovery, if I'm not, not mistaken. They created those as a path back to normal relationship. And they use normal relationship with us, to replace the abnormal relationship that I had with my substance or my relationship or an event or object or any of that stuff. Make sense? Yeah. Abnormal relationship, real relationship must replace that. If we don't have anything to replace the abnormal relationship, we are the worst. Because, we've taken everything we were using to make an insane life sane. That's what people don't get. Self-medicating is a corrective measure to try to survive an insane context. They all think that we have a problem, but the secret is it's all those nutsos out there. They're crazy. And I've got to be with them. It's intolerable. I can't do it. Now, problem is that then when my addiction goes bad or when my substances do what substances do, and they're no respecter of persons, when those negative consequences start building up and showing up and they're so obvious with me, the context points a finger at me. And I go, yeah, but the context does not seem to be willing to look at their role in the whole picture. And so sometimes we find ourselves here. It's okay. It's okay. I just want you to know that I know. I know. And I want you to know that it's, for lack of a better word, reversible. It's doable. There can be adjustment. There can be real relationship achieved. But there'll be a lot of times, there'll be some days and times that you really don't think that you can. Okay. But you can. Hold on. You know, in restoring real relationship, I don't know, and you can answer if you want to, but what about real relationship is so inviting? We're created for it. I truly believe that. We're not supposed to be alone, except occasionally when we want to be. But overall, all the time, we're not built to just be on our own. What is so fast? What draws us, to each other? I believe that deep down, we all want to share. Does that sound crazy? We want to share. I was always told that I was selfish. You may never heard that said about you. They always told me I was selfish. I didn't get it. I didn't understand that. They also told me that I had a bad attitude. I sure didn't know what that was. All I knew is I had one, but no one really explained that to me. I believe that we want to share. And what makes it possible for us to really share? When we come into these rooms and we go to these groups, it's been my experience that we are able to share because we kind of have a common denominator, if you will. Because when you go to an AA meeting, an NA meeting, or a CR meeting, or an any initial meeting that meets up, that operates off the steps, we come into it knowing who we are. And this isn't a bad word, we're broken. I'm broken, and I cannot control myself. I still can't control myself. For a long time, I thought that was a problem, till I discovered that was really the way it was designed. It's supposed to be. And that may sound funny to you right now because you think, no, I'm in here, I'm doing all this so I can gain what? Control. Ooh, no, I don't want you ever to gain control. Paradoxical, isn't it? That's, not two doctors, but contradictory ideas. One that looks like I'm pointing this way and then the one pointing this way. You see, the secret or the trick to recovery, in my opinion, you go to that first step. And I say it like this when I'm working with folks and speaking to groups. I have to stay at the I can't.
Amen.
I live now at the I can't place. Remember when I talk about addicts having willpower, that's really one of the hardest shifts to make, because our whole life people told us that we can, not only that we can, but we should. And so then I spent years, shoulding all over myself. I can't is the truth of it. I hope that comes across I forget that I'm on that. Should make sense. You see, it's when I come to the realization that I can't, that I actually have a window of opportunity to move into real relationship. And the difficulty comes that usually when I feel better, I start going back to the illusion that I can. I can will kill you. Here's the secret. They think they can.
Right.
But we know they can't either. Their can't just looks different than ours. But they can't either. But nobody has told them yet. Well, and usually they don't get arrested for their I can't. They don't lose their license for their I can't. They don't lose their job. They don't damage the relationship quite as visibly with their I can't. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But they can't. Nobody can. But what brings us together when we come into these rooms is I know that I'm broken, and we share a brokenness. And it's a great kind of levelizer, right? And it sets me up. It sets me on a path, if you will, to engage in real relationship, which has vulnerability and sharing and honesty and all of those things that scare us to death. And it's hard. And it doesn't make sense in the left side of my brain. 2 hemispheres in my brain, that left side, you know that when you went to school, all they did was shove stuff in the left side of your hemisphere. But the right side holds all that music of experience, all the aesthetics, all the creativity, all the art, all the emotion. Have you ever told yourself to not feel what you're feeling? See, that's the left talking to the right, and I'm going to tell you something. The left can't tell the right what to do. Ever. It's impossible. Don't think that there are people out there that can tell themselves what to feel. If they tell you they're doing that, they're lying. You can't. Left can't tell the right what to do. I'm going to tell you about the habitual problem with our pattern is that I can take something that stops the right from feeling. This ain't rocket science, is it? See, I thought I was a genius. I started drinking at 13. Thought I was a genius. Figured it out. All these years they told me not to feel. They didn't say those words, don't feel, but they gave me the message that, hey, if you're angry, don't be angry. If you're sad, don't be sad. If you're happy, if you're too happy, don't be too happy. I used to run in the house and dive. I'm an only child. I'd had to play with myself. That sounds bad, but I had to play with myself. I would run, I would jump, I would dive over the furniture as in play war. I'd get shot. I was happy as I could be. They come in, they go, boy. That's what I thought my name was. Boy. What are you doing? What has gotten into you? I don't know. I was just playing. I was happy. Get outside. Don't be running in this house. So I go out. So even when I was happy, I got the idea that I'm not supposed to be happy. And when I was scared, did you ever get scared? Do you remember when the light switch was way up here? Well, I mean, way up there. We had to turn the lights out at our house because evidently electricity is just like gold. It's the most valuable commodity on the planet. I thought, at age 4, I thought if you waste electricity, you're done for the rest of your life. So you have to turn the light out in your room, remember? And I'd go, of course, I'd look around, in a little 10-foot room. Check everything, and I'd get ready, and I'd reach up and I'd flip that light off, right? Tink. Whew, it's dark. So I scurry out into the hall. I'm going down past the extra room that's been dark for a while. God knows what's in there. So you know how you getting down the hall and you tuck your rear end up under you past that room. Made it past that room. I get into the living room. Say I'm not so smart yet. I get in and I go, made it. And they go, boy. Then I freeze. That's never good. Boy is never good. What are you doing? I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you not aware that I have turned the light off, come down the hall past the extra room in the dark? I survived. I made it. I'm here. I'm alive. Whew. That was scary. I'll give you a guess what they told me. Boy, you ain't got nothing to be scared about. So I'm like, walk back in there and come in there like a man. I'm like, oh, God. So I walk back just out of eyesight, you know. I ain't going back to the whole dark hallway. I'm just out of eyesight, and I'll go, walk back in. You see, they told me, don't feel mad, don't feel sad, don't feel glad, and don't feel scared. Right. I'm in a real bind because I don't know how to live and not feel. So by mistake, almost, I start doing what all the big people do. I start pretending. So when I'm mad, I pretend like I'm not. When I'm sad, I pretend like I'm not. And when I'm happy, I pretend like I'm not, because you can't trust a real happy person. And not in our culture. And when I'm scared, I pretend like I'm not. And that went on for a while, but that ain't real good. It's not a good path toward what we call a healthy self. I grow up rejecting what I'm actually feeling. That's a bad relationship with myself. And then, like I said, about 13, I stumbled on to, started drinking, and I'm like, ding, ding, ding. I got it figured out. This is what you do when you don't like what you feel. That's all we'll say about that, because we know that story. Doesn't work. It doesn't work. But it puts me on a habituated pattern, along with some physiological aspects of actually putting a substance that can set up what's more akin to an allergic reaction than anything else. It puts me on a path of self-destruction. And I can't seem to get off, because the relationship that I have developed with myself, then with this substance, what once was the solution all of a sudden turns on me. And it becomes the problem. And I know that probably for anybody else. But there's nothing to do. There's no way to deal with it except bear down into the same idea that I talked about. I said, I can fix this. I can do it. Did you guys ever cycle around to that idea? Yep. I can do it, and then I couldn't. I can do it, and I could. I can do it, and I can't. Then you get to, I got to do it. And then boom. Cunning, baffling, powerful. I can't. See, the relationship that I must embrace is the I can't. Is it any different than saying I can't save myself? I can't do anything about the relationship of a sinful state, a world that I come into. That's just where we find ourselves. But many years ago, the Creator sent a rescuer, a Son, who came. And you know what He did? He set up a relationship that has very little, if anything, to do with going to church. Unless we redefine church, because church happens every day. Church is me and you saying hi. We're smiling. That's church. This is assembly. This is a place where the church comes to assemble.
Amen.
It's not really church. But we grow up in a culture that gives us a very different meaning. In fact, this church culture that we grow up in reinforces the illusion of I can. And if they're doing that, and when they're doing that, I'm telling you that's a false teaching. Because then they'll turn right around and say, you can't. Have you ever heard that you can't, earn your salvation?
Yeah.
Here's the ... that they never would say out loud. You can't earn your salvation, but you better try. I've never seen the word try in the Bible. It's not there. You don't need to try. I don't need to try. I need a Savior.
Amen.
I need to be saved from myself. He doesn't ask me to try. He just asks me to follow. And the easiest way to follow is to live in the I can't. That's what makes it possible. Real relationship, the fact that we can share emotions, thoughts, ideas, experiences, everything that's gone wrong, everything that's gone right. Think about the steps that you go through. At some point in time, you sit down and you write a moral inventory. You list all of the things that were good, that weren't good, that went well, that didn't go well. It's a testimony. And all of us could write one of those down, but then next step is what? I got to share it with someone. Yeah. I'm not used to that kind of vulnerability. But I'm telling you, the secret, or the power, if you will, of recovery is held with real relationship. What we were created for in the beginning. Before we chose knowledge, the book tells us that we walked and talked with the Creator in the cool of the evening. I can't even wrap my mind around that. But that's how it was described. Real relationship. You see, there was no knowledge of good and evil. That distinction had not been formed. It was all good. It was all sharing. It was all that it was supposed to be. Yikes, here comes the bit of the story we don't like. Because there was a tree over there. It's the knowledge of good and evil. The contrast, or the distinction that had not been made yet. And the Creator said, hey, I'm paraphrasing because I don't read it like this, but it says, trees over there, it's got to be here because choice has to exist for a relationship to occur. So the tree's there, it's a knowledge of good and evil, but I'm going to tell you, don't go there and eat of that. Because if you choose that, you're going to die. It's going to kill you. I don't even know if he knew what die was. I don't know if there was any death prior to that. Doesn't matter much because the tree was there and everything else was paradise. Can you imagine that? Everything else was paradise. And the tree was there. What a unique relationship. But we know the evil one, form of a serpent, the story goes, speaking to the woman while the man stands there, like a dummy. Evidently, conversations between serpents and people were not all that unusual, because no one commented on that, because that's what I would have been going. Oh, they're just having a conversation. He says, yeah, you need to eat of this tree. He doesn't want you to do that because you'll be like him. We were already like him. What was the temptation? Power in the form of control. There was no temptation to do evil because evil was unknown prior to the eating. The temptation was to control. If I know, I can control. This is the same world we live in today. If I know, I can control. The Creator said, do not choose knowledge. Do not try to control. If you do, it's going to kill you. Well, we chose knowledge, didn't we? Kind of went downhill, from there, if you remember the story. Boom, doom. Fascinating thing. I don't know if I've ever said this here or not. I don't know if I've talked about this. But right after that, and this does tie into our story, the book says that they ate, she gave to him, he ate, because he's standing there like a dummy. And it says their eyes were open, and they realized they were naked. Realized they were naked. So prior to, we all got to run around naked. And that was like normal. Do you know that's the way it's supposed to be? Little plug for a nudist colony here. That's actually more appropriate. That's probably not going to sell. But that's how it was. No, my eyes were opened. They realized they were naked, and here's the big one. And they were ashamed. Oh my, don't miss the significance of the birth of shame. Man, do we still deal with that? Yeah, we do. And so when they were ashamed, then they ran and did what? They hid. So the birth of shame, the birth of hiding, they were trying to fashion some clothes out of some leaves. And get this, you talk about fascination of relationship. It says in the cool of the evening, here comes the Creator. And the Creator, see if you can hang on to this, the Creator asks a question. Why in the world would a Creator, an all-knowing Creator, ask a question ever? Because the questions are for the interaction. And interactions drive relationships.
Amen.
The creator of the universe asked a question because the answer was secondary. What was important? The interaction. So he comes through and he goes, "Where are y'all?" That's him. We're hiding. Why are you hiding? We're naked. Isn't this fascinating? Who told you you were naked? This will relate here. So the man jumps up and says, "The woman you gave me took of that fruit and ate." She jumps up and says, "It was the serpent who was in here." All true points. So instantly, shame, hiding, and blame. Does that sound remotely akin to the world you've lived in? Me too. We're still living in that world, ain't we? You see, real relationship, when done by design, there's no shame. In Jesus Christ, there's no shame. You're pure white as the driven snow. No shame. There's no shame, no hiding. And never a need to blame. Even when I get in that weird spot of not being able to perfectly live out what I say I believe, there's no blame and there's no shame. Because real relationship was restored on the cross. In these rooms, real relationship is restored around those circles. When we talk and we share at night by the coffee pot, talking to each other early in the morning, fixing breakfast, talking to each other, sharing, opening up, being vulnerable.
Amen.
Sharing. The draw is there. You feel it. You feel it when you get in these rooms. And sometimes you have to fight it real hard because you feel it so strong. But it's scary, isn't it? It's scary. And I struggle with that. I struggle with things that are emotional. I struggle with things that are scary. I'm still caught up in the rejection of self, the avoidance of what I feel, okay, the blaming, trying to figure out a reason. And recovery calls me to accept, calls me to acceptance. I want to accept that I can't of this situation. I want to accept what I feel. What I feel, and I'll close with this. So after I accept and I feel, then I can share. And if the place is safe, people who also accept, feel, and share, then real relationship grows. And it is a power greater than yourself. And that's the only way I can stay sober, is connecting to a greater power that is also in this room. See, my faith tells me, I'm going to tell you about following Jesus Christ. My faith tells me that He's the Son of God and that He came and He lived on this earth. And I'm going to ask you a question. Was Jesus, if you've looked into the Scriptures, was Jesus ever mad? He was shirt-tearing mad. He even took some action, which was that was a favorite part of the whole Bible when I was a kid, getting in trouble. He made a whip and turned some tables over and they threw some church people out of the church. Yeah, he got mad. Was Jesus ever sad? Best memory verse there is. Jesus wept. And he was evidently going to raise his friend from the dead, my faith tells me, but in the moment, he still cried because he was sad. Was Jesus ever glad? Was he happy? Man, that's the hard one to find. You have to read between the lines. I see it when maybe he goes out in the boat by himself. That'd make me happy. Or to the other side of the mountain and go, oh, gee, I'd be happy then. Or when the little children are coming. Seems like he was happy then, but we don't have a whole bunch of stories about explicit happiness, but we know he was happy because he was human. Well, was Jesus ever scared? Scared to death. You see, the Creator came as the creature and lived with all of those emotions. They weren't to be changed. They weren't to be done away with. They weren't to be rejected. They're a part of us. He came and showed us that we are not supposed to not feel. It's a mistake. It's a lie. It's a deception. And we live in a world that is eat up with it. Because everywhere you turn in this culture, in the present world, it will give you the message that you should control and or change the way you feel. That's a lie. The way you feel can change, but it's kind of in this big feedback loop, depending on what I do. And it will change, particularly if I don't try to control what I feel. You see, I believe at least part and parcel is that the very image of God that we all share is mad, sad, glad, and scared. That's our heart. That's our emotion. Scripture says we're all created in the image of God. We sure don't all look the same. We don't like the same flavor of ice cream. Biologically, there's a lot of sameness to us for sure, but the image of the Creator is found at that heart level. You see, He feels what we feel. And when you're mad, I wonder if you look in the mirror, if you're really shirt-tearing mad, do you look in the mirror and go, that's just like God. I am just like God. Not in the big supreme sense, but in the sense that I'm feeling what He felt. When I'm sad, it's just like Jesus. When I'm scared, I go, yeah, me and Jesus. Just right there together. You see, that's what real relationship is designed to do, because you are just like Him. And your whole life you've been told you weren't. That's a lie. We are just like Him, just like each other. My hope and my prayer, I'm going to come back a couple of more weeks. Y'all figure out something else to talk about. Okay? And we'll do so. My hope and my prayer is that I find you here safe and sound. And if your path takes you out before then, God bless you. God bless y'all for listening so much. You've been kind. So.